All right, I think we can get started. We've got a really nice group here. Welcome to today's Innovative Computing Systems webinar entitled Safeguarding Your Practice, the Importance of AI Policies. Before we begin, I'm thrilled to thank everybody for taking the time to join us. For those of you who don't know ICS, Innovative Computing Systems provides managed services for law firms, including cloud services, cybersecurity, and AI consulting and implementation. We pride ourselves in a consistent satisfaction rating of well over 95%. Last time I checked, it was at 97, and we're super proud of that. We're excited to have Eric Hoffmaster presenting today on this critical topic. Eric has been with ICS for 16 years, and to his credit, he established our first Technical Assistance Center, our TAC. He's our inaugural Chief Operating Officer, and he's authored many articles from remote support to cybersecurity to speaking and implementing AI, specifically in law firms. Lastly, Eric's been known to make magic happen. He's a member of the Academy of Magical Arts, an International Brotherhood of Magicians, and having performed at both the Hollywood Magic Castle and Hermosa Beach Comedy and Magic Club. You don't get that with every speaker. As we get started, feel free to place your questions in the Q&A section, and we'll address them at the end. If you have any issues or technical difficulties or need to chat with a moderator, please put that over in the chat box. We encourage your participation and look forward to a great session. Over to you, Eric.
All right, Ted, thank you. And thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm going to share my screen here and we'll get started. So today's webinar is going to be about safeguarding your practice, the importance of AI policies. Now, I know just how riveting policies can be. We'll try to make it interesting for you, make it well worth your time. So let's go through it. When you signed up for the webinar, you should have gotten a link to download our AI policy workbook. Now, if you haven't done that yet, I put the QR code on the screen. I really encourage you to download that. It's going to be a companion to today's webinar. A lot of the things we talk about in today's webinar will follow along with that workbook, and it's something actionable for you to take away from this as well. Now, this is the second webinar in our AI Mastery series. The first webinar from December was graciously hosted by ALA as part of their solution series. I put the QR code on the screen to go to the recording of that webinar. If you weren't part of the first webinar, that'll give a little context to today's topics. In the first webinar, we talked in kind of broad strokes about what AI implementation looks like in a law firm, how to do it safely and securely. And part of that was about AI policies, which we're going to do a deep dive in today. So there's the QR code. I'll leave it on the screen for a second. And all right, let's get started. So today's agenda, what we're going to cover is what is an AI policy? And we're going to talk about what are the risks of not having one and how to create one. Next, it's going to be about how do I turn policy into action? Great, I've got a piece of paper that says I do things, but how do we make that a living, breathing thing in your firm? And then it's going to evolve over time. So what do we need to adapt to? How do we need to evolve our policy to keep up with the rapidly changing nature of artificial intelligence? Okay, so what is an AI policy? Very simply, it's a formal document. It's not going to be an email out to somebody that says this is what we should be doing, but it should be formal document stored in your company's policy repository, just something that is very transparent to your users and something people can reference. Very simple policy. It assigns responsibility. Now, I really encourage everybody to, when you have an AI policy, you have a person to go to, a person that's leading AI for the firm, a person that people can ask questions to, that understands the policy, kind of champions that for the inside of your firm. A big part of the policy is it defines your desired behavior and the inverse of that, the prohibited behaviors. And then lastly, integrated into the culture and operations. Yeah, I talked about how we turn policy into action. So we're actually going to get into that integrated into culture and operations piece. So if you have the workbook, and again, if you don't have it, you click that link down there, the QR code. for our AI policy workbook, because section 1 is going to follow along in that workbook. And so understanding AI and law firms. Now I'm going to pause here for a second. I'm seeing some chat around the cybersecurity and services piece of what we do, and those are important. But I think I want to focus today on AI. Really want to stay on topic. So, Ted, would you mind dropping your meeting link in the chat? So if anybody is interested in talking about that stuff, they can go to you. Let's get back on track with the AI. All right?
Got it.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. There it is. Okay, we'll get back to it. Okay, so we're going to talk about the risks of not having an AI policy. So in the absence of a policy, these are some of the risks, and I'll put them briefly on screen here, and we'll go into each one of these in more detail. So breach of client privilege, some security risks, malpractice, erosion of trust, and operational inefficiencies. So again, this is in the absence of defining your desired behavior. These are some of the risks. So in the absence of a policy that defines your behavior, your desired behavior, what if someone has an AI system? They just went out and said, you know what, this AI tool looks good. I could save myself a few minutes here. And you don't have a policy defined that says you should or shouldn't do that. They could tie that into your client information and inadvertently disclose your client information. It's a big risk. If that's connected directly to your client data, that AI tool could potentially store and retrieve that data against your knowledge or will. There's also a risk of using client information to train. So when it has your client information, if an AI tool has your client information, it can use that data to train its underlying model. And in doing so, other people that use that tool would then have the information that is proprietary to you, your client information, as something that they use, right? And so this all leads into, it's kind of hard to maintain your attorney-client privilege. If you can't control this narrative, it gets a little chaotic. So that's one of the big ones here. Let's talk about some security risks. Again, in the same situation where somebody is using an AI tool that, hey, they're very well intended. They found an AI tool that does something that they'd like to do. Well, putting that AI tool on their computer could potentially open up vulnerabilities in the software and lead to cyber security attacks against that system, especially with in-house AI systems. And so this is a security risk that you begin to open the window in your secure environment. But also, what happens if that AI tool that has access to your client data is compromised? If that AI tool is hacked by somebody else, well, that somebody else, that malicious actor that caused that breach, now has access to your client data. Right? There are potential data breach concerns. And of course, if they get access to your data through that data breach, there's going to be an unauthorized access to your sensitive data, your client information. And that would then lead to the exposure, whether that's your client information or trade secrets or proprietary information, all because somebody was well-intended and wanted to use an AI tool to make their life better for a few minutes, right? All legitimate, well-intended things, but in the absence of having a very clear policy, this could be a risk. So malpractice. Again, in the absence of desired behavior. What if somebody relies on relies on AI to either create a document or summarize a document, and there's inherent inaccuracies in the AI output, and they rely on that. We haven't defined the human behavior that we want around AI, and if they're too reliant on the AI, they could do their jobs incorrectly or inappropriately. Another one is the potential for using fabricated case citations. There are definitely examples, you can look this up online, where an attorney cited fake case data and they've been fined by courts. There are legitimate examples of this happening. And so you need to make sure that you have a really clear definition of the behaviors, or else somebody could be misusing AI to the detriment of themselves and your firm. And then also overlooking critical details. If I say, hey, AI, summarize this document, and you just take the output and you don't double check, you don't verify, well, it could misinterpret the document or you could miss critical details, both of which are pretty damaging. Let's talk about erosion of trust. Again, in the absence of a policy, you could potentially lose credibility and client confidence. And what I mean by this is, let's say you have a responsibility to disclose the use of AI. And if you don't have a policy and a client asks you, hey, are you using AI? And your best answer is, it's not a good look. So by having a policy, by having a consistent set of expectations, you know that all of your team are using AI or not in the appropriate way. So you can communicate with your clients. You can set the expectation and you align what you say with your actions. Otherwise, there could be this loss of credibility and confidence. Also, if somebody's using AI and doesn't do the human validation, or there's AI related errors or the security risk from earlier, well, that's a pretty big impact on your own reputation as a firm. So there could be reputational damage. And then transparency in AI use. The American Bar Association published an opinion last year that talked about AI and your responsibility to disclose AI in certain cases, certain situations. We've seen two sides of the coin where there are clients that come to a firm and says, I don't want you to use AI. And then there's other cases where the clients come and say, I expect you to use AI, because that's kind of a permission to play thing now. Well, if you don't have an AI policy and you're not transparent about that on either side, that could cause erosion of trust with your current client base and also prevent you from getting new clients. So those are all real risks, again, about the absence of a policy. Let's talk about some inefficiencies. In the absence of a policy, if you have 4 or 5 people that are all using different AIs for different functions, it's kind of chaos. And how are you supposed to do quality control and oversight on all the AI stuff that's happening? If it's chaos, you don't have the policy, you really can't. And that leads to other risks like inconsistent use of AI across the firm. That can cause a lot of operational inefficiencies. And having the lack of clear guidelines, not having this policy can lead to 2 very critical problems in a business. The first of which is we're too hesitant to adopt an AI tool that could potentially catapult our business into the future. But because we don't have a policy or an expectations about how we use AI, we could be too reluctant and too hesitant. Or the other side of that is we're too heavily reliant on an AI tool. We overuse it to the detriment of our firm, right? And lastly, if you have multiple people using different AIs for different purposes, what if the output from those multiple different AIs are in conflict? Like, how do you deal with this? There's a lot of waste involved if you're having to deal with this situation. So it can bring a lot of the operational inefficiencies. Now let's go back to the workbook for a second. So at the end of end of section 1, rather, we put in 3 questions. And those questions are meant to elicit some thoughts around your firm and how you use AI today. And in the workbook, we really want you to kind of jot down those notes, because this is going to be how you can take this webinar into the future, back to the firm. What are you going to do with what you learned today? So the first question is, how is your firm currently using or planning to use AI? You know what? And no matter where you are on your journey, it's okay. You might not be using AI. You might have the Wild West where you've got just different people doing it. All that's okay today, because once you understand the situation, then you can seek to improve it. So just think about that. And you can jot down the notes for your benefit. What concerns do you have regarding AI in your legal practice? And when I talked about all the risks, did any of those risks really resonate with you? Does anything really go, oh, wow, that's a good one. I didn't think about that. And then lastly, which areas of your firm do you think would benefit the most? Is it certain workflows or practice groups? Is it client intake? There's all sorts of things you might be able to use AI for. And hey, maybe you don't know what AI could benefit, and that's fine too. We're all here on this journey together. Okay, so let's move into kind of section 2 of the workbook, where we talk about the AI policy key components. And so we're going to talk about building an AI policy. And in the workbook, there's some sample language, excerpts from our own template, some sample language to help you get started. So every AI policy should have at least these three key effective elements. There could be more, but the biggest one up front is talking about ethical and legal compliance. The concept behind this is a statement that says how we're going to use AI, how we're going to use it ethically, responsibly, and within the law. What are those compliance things? That's very upfront. And then the next part is acceptable use. And this can cover the people, the tools, the functions. This defines that desired behavior that we talked about and the inverse of the prohibited behavior. And then the approved AI tools, which we'll go into detail here in a minute, but this is a very key component to having your AI policy not just be a piece of paper, not just live in your firm, but be survivable and scalable because AI is changing so very quickly. How can your policy keep up? So let's talk about that ethical and legal compliance. Again, this is the how are we going to use AI safely, securely, responsibly, ethically, legally. By having this statement, by getting everybody together and saying, this is how we use AI, you ensure adherence to your own professional responsibility obligations. We can also promote transparency because you have a policy, because you have a statement about how you're going to responsibly, safely, securely, legally, ethically. Imagine if a client asks you, hey, how do you use AI? And you go, here you go. There you go. That's going to help you improve not only your relationships with your current clients, but also prospects. Mitigates risk of breaching client confidentiality, attorney-client privilege. It's going to mitigate some of those risks we talked about in the first section by making sure we have this statement. And then lastly, it addresses potential discrimination and bias issues in AI-generated content. Now, if you don't understand or don't know about this bias and discrimination in AI, this is very much a thing. Certain AIs, when they train them on their underlying data, they train it on a set of data. If that set of data has inherent biases and discrimination built in, of course, the AI tool, everything is based on that. But it also could be the algorithm that predicts the text. If the algorithm itself has inherent biases and discrimination, your output is going to be based on that. So having some language around how we do that and also vetting the tools that provide it will ensure you address those potential discrimination concerns. Let's get into acceptable use. And this kind of follows along in the workbook. The first part of that is scope. And scope can be this document applies to, in the example text from the workbook, it applies to all employees, contractors, vendors, whatever. But it also defines the scope of who is allowed to use AI. And I mentioned the survivability piece. I don't recommend putting names of people in here because this is a policy. It has to survive. It has to scale. But you could say this group of people, maybe it's the group of people who have been trained on AI usage. So you're defining who is allowed and who is not. And then you're going to establish protocols to how to have humans oversee. When we talked about the malpractice risks, about humans not looking at the output and potentially causing issues, well, there has to be humans must oversee this. AI is a predictive text model. It's not intelligent yet. So there has to be human intelligence on top of it, and that's really key. And then expectations for what do you do with client information or internal or sensitive information? Are we allowed to put client information into AI tools or not? Maybe in some cases we are, but others are not. You define those, whatever works best for your firm. And then lastly, the billing practices. I mentioned the American Bar Association opinion from last year, but it really talks about not just transparency of AI, but also what are the billing implications? What are the legal and ethical requirements a law firm has to bill in a different way if using AI? Some of those may apply to your firm. And if it does apply to your firm, making sure everybody understands how billing changes when AI is involved. And then we'll move into the approved AI tools. Like I said, the approved AI tools is just a pre-specified list of these are the things we can use. And if it's not on this list, I'm sorry, it's not allowed. This is where the survivability comes in. When you have ChatGPT 3.5 and then 4 and then O1 and coming up with O4, or XAI came up with the newest Grok, or there's new things with Copilot, or all the different AI tools. Things are happening so quickly and advancing so much. By having a policy that states what is allowed and what is not, and what tools are allowed and what are not, means, hey, the next tool that comes out, DeepSeek. That was a recent thing. Am I allowed to use DeepSeek? We define it already. We don't have to react to market conditions. We have it predefined, and that's really important. It also allows you to protect against new AI technologies like that DeepSeek. Hey, are we allowed to use it? But it gives you some time to evaluate the things. It gives you some space to say, okay, there's a new tool. Nobody can use it. While we then look at it to see if there's a use case, see if there's a business value, see if the safety and security of that tool matches our standards. It gives you that time. It enables the evaluation. And then because you're only approving a certain set of tools and maybe a certain set of functions, it makes it a lot easier to train your users. Hey, this is what you're going to do. Here's how you're going to do it. Here's the benefit you can get. Otherwise, if you don't have a policy, it's Wild West. You've got all these different tools. It's hard to manage, hard to maintain. This gives you focus and lets your team be effective at using the specific tools that you approve. And then lastly, it does ensure compatibility with your existing workflows and security standards. You've done your security verification and validation to approve the tool. You know it meets your firm's standards. If it's a function-based, hey, for this function, let's call it client intake, we're using these tools for this, or document generation is this, right? You're now compatible with your workflows and your security standards as well. Okay, policy evolution. So when we talk about policy evolution, I talked about that survivability. We talked about scalability. Well, this is really where there are new AI advancements. Because AI as we know it today is not going to be the same AI we know in 2 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years. We're already seeing new agentic AI or agent-based AI. That's a new feature and a functionality beyond what AI was last year. So as new advancements to AI come about, it's really important for us to revisit and revise our policy. If we choose to use AI in a different way, we're going to make sure that gets added to the policy. What about using AI new in different ways? It's the same tool, but hey, I found a new use for it. Like maybe we have ChatGPT or Copilot, and now we create an agent internally that our internal team can chat with. Same tool, but maybe a different function. We need to make sure we revise and revisit that policy. New workflows. I mentioned client intake, but there's a ton of workflows that happen in a law firm, and different practice groups have different workflows. So if we identify a new workflow that AI could help, and we're going to use AI for a different workflow, we got to revise and revisit and revise the policy document as well to match. And lastly, legal and regulatory changes. AI is still new. There's still legal and regulatory changes happening constantly with AI. So as those things change, we have to stay on top of it and revisit and revise the policy to match. Okay, great. Let's assume I got a piece of paper. Let's assume I have all the elements of an effective policy. Let's assume I've defined the functions or the workflows or the desired behaviors, the do's and don'ts, the acceptable and prohibited use. Again, in the workbook, there are examples of some of that language in there to help you. But let's assume for a second I have all that. And now I've got a pretty little piece of paper that says, great, this is my AI policy. Now what? So we got to be able to take this into action. And the first thing that we recommend doing is in the policy, we've defined that champion, but really in the implementation of the policy, that champion has to step up and lead. We have that ownership. We have that person or committee within your firm that is responsible for AI implementation. That person or group of people have to lead the change. And then you got to educate and train. I mean, obviously, with any policy, you're going to say, hey, staff, there's a new policy. And for AI specifically, there's got to be a little bit deeper education, not just about what the policy is, but what are the tools? How do we use them effectively? So you can train them on the proper AI use. How do we use them safely and securely? The AI champion is leading that. And you might do this every year. You're definitely going to need to do this every time you onboard a new employee as well. There's got to be a constant education. And again, every time that policy changes, you gotta redo this whole education and train thing. It may not have to be as deep of a training as the first, but educating and training, that's kind of the first step to getting this into practice. And then audit and monitor. There's lots of different ways to audit and monitor. But the idea behind it is you need to make sure if we say we're going to do something and not do something, that we are doing what we said we do. It's inspecting what you expect. Right? There's, like I said, there's multiple ways to do it. You could put a technical control in place to say, this website, we can't go to the ChatGPT website, or we can't go to and download this AI tool. You can put technical controls and enforcement in place, but hey, maybe that doesn't fit your firm. Maybe your firm is a little bit more casual, but you do want to audit and monitor. You want to look to see who's doing what. You want to be able to ingest the amount of data or information around who is doing what, because just having a piece of paper and expecting everyone to follow it is not enough. And then lastly, measure success. So it's about measuring the adoption, right? So it's, are my employees actually using these AI tools? Great. I'm paying all this money for this AI tool. Is my team even using it? And then if they are using it, how do I measure the benefit from it? So a big part of this is creating feedback loops, is about constant meetings with the team to ask the questions, how's it going? What are you seeing a benefit? Not just kind of manager to employee or that level, but also if someone who is using AI finds a really cool way to do something in AI, sharing that with the rest of your firm. Maybe an attorney found a really good prompt, share it with the rest of the attorneys. Right? Part of being an effective use of AI is sharing the knowledge. So create those feedback loops, ask the questions, try to measure how people are getting benefits from your AI tools as well. Okay, so let's go to how we can help. Because yeah, we did a webinar, and we'll do more webinars, but the intent of the webinar is to help you understand how critical this piece is. And so I want to take that a step further. I want to offer you a 60-minute free AI consultation that you can meet with us, and we can talk about various things. We can talk about establishing an AI policy for you, or maybe reviewing your current AI policy if you have one, and helping give you guidance and suggestions on creating it. If you look in the workbook, we have sample language. That all comes from a template that we use as a base for when we work with our firms to create AI policies. Meet with us, I'll give you the template, and then we can customize it together. But we can also discuss your AI strategy and implementation. And that could be anything from we're testing AI today, but we need to know how to get it out to the masses. Or I'm not using AI today, what's my first step? Or I'm using these AI tools, but I need help getting the most out of it. Or how do I effectively train? Let us help. Or AI product analysis. What are the tools out there that we should be using? Whether it's a general tool like OpenAI's ChatGPT or something legal specific, CoCounsel, DraftWise, Spellbook, any of the legal specific applications too. We work with firms all the time on a variety of different legal specific. We've done vendor risk management and security on legal specific AI tools. We're well versed in the legal AI segment. So you can book a meeting directly with me. And so I'll leave that QR code up on the screen to have a 60-minute AI consultation where we can go through any of these. And again, I'll give you our template policy and help you customize it and create something that works for you. So I'll leave that on the screen for just a minute, and then we'll move into Q&A. Okay, Ted, if you happen to have that link available, would you mind dropping a link in the chat so people can click that as well? Okay,
Yep. I'll get it
awesome.
right here.
Thank you. All right, there's the link to the 60-minute AI consultation. All right, now we'll move into Q&A. So I'd really like to hear what questions you have. You've got me. I'd love to answer them. How can we help? You can put them in the Q&A. If you have a question and want to say it, raise your hand. We can unmute you. Did I put you all to sleep? Okay, we'll give it a minute for the questions.
I had one private chat to the moderator, just asking about, who's in the end, who's held responsible for the errors and negative outcomes from AI.
Yeah, that's a great question. There is not a lot of regulation and policy about the responsibility of errors. AI has been known to hallucinate because it is a predictive text model. It's not intelligent, and the makers of AI are not responsible themselves for any inaccuracies. They will not take responsibilities for anything their AI says or does that may be false, untrue, or misleading. That's why it's so important to have the human validation. If you use AI to do something, don't just take its word, because as we improve AI, we reduce those hallucinations, but they still exist. That's why it's so critically important. We, with our big brains, are looking at the output and validating it, because we are the ones responsible if we misuse AI output, or if we use AI output that's incorrect. The cases that happened in 23 and 24 where attorneys were fined by the courts because they cited fake case data. They didn't go back to ChatGPT or OpenAI. They didn't go back to the AI vendors and say, you're responsible. It was the attorneys responsible. And so it's up to us to make sure we validate that output.
I don't know if you see the next one. Can you share more what the consultation looks like? I mean, certainly you could talk about some of the engagements you've already done, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I intended this consultation to be open-ended because I don't want to have just one specific box. I'm only going to talk to you about X. It's very open-ended. Book 60 minutes with me to talk about AI. It's really that easy because I don't know where you are on your journey, and our intent is to help you along that. So I don't want some kind of prescribed set of consultation. But the idea is wherever you're at on your journey is okay. Let's look at that together. Let's answer questions you have. We've done ChatGPT workshops where we'll sit down with firms and help them actually get started by logging into ChatGPT and doing prompts together so they can start to get benefit. We've got other firms where we've met and we've talked through, okay, you have an AI policy, but it's not really in action yet. So how do I turn that into action? Go through that piece. Or we have a group of people that are using it, but we're just struggling to get it firm-wide. All of these are kind of parts of the great AI journey. We're here to help you along that journey, wherever you may be. So it's not a prescribed thing. It's very open-ended. It's whatever you need.
So there's one question, and it's kind of two parts. One of them ended up in the host and panelist chat window, but I think I can address both questions here. The question is, can you talk about specific AI tools, open versus closed AI? I know we covered that a lot in the ALA presentation, but could you revisit for just a
Yeah,
moment?
yeah. So it's a great question because it's very confusing. What is open versus closed? I mean, the company name OpenAI has closed AI systems. What? Like this makes no sense. So very simply, open versus closed is the way that we describe the inherent built-in security protocols and what the AI tool is allowed to take back into the AI development company. So let's take ChatGPT free, the free version of ChatGPT. That's considered an open system because everything that I put into that goes right back to ChatGPT. They own everything you put in, whether it's a document or text or their outputs. Everything goes back to OpenAI, and they will use that information to train their underlying models. Whereas a closed system, think of it like a private bubble. I'm paying for this system. Everything that I put into this system stays in my bubble. It does not go back to the vendor for them to train data. It does not go out to the broader internet. Everything stays containerized into your private instance or your private bubble. That's the simplest way to explain open versus closed. Now, how do I know what system is open versus closed? It's about due diligence, looking at security, actually looking at each individual tool. Like, okay, is Otter AI for meetings, is that an open or closed system? You have to kind of look at their security protocols, what they say they do with your data. And that'll help you understand the security implications of using such a tool. I hope that that answered the question. If not,
Yeah.
please put more in the
And,
chat.
and I would guess they'd love for you to expand a little bit, just maybe identify or throw some different tools out there that you've come across from different legal vendors, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. So let's take the paid version of ChatGPT for a second, whether that's the ChatGPT Pro or any of the enterprise plans like Teams or Enterprise. If you pay for ChatGPT, inherently it's a closed system because now that you're paying for the tool, they said they are containerizing all of your data and it will not go back to train their LLMs or their AI. It will not train. All of your data stays private. So they have a whole section about security. Now, if you look at Microsoft Copilot, which in and of itself is kind of confusing because there's Copilot that they branded for the free version, as well as Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is kind of the enterprise level that talks to all of your 365 subscriptions, like your email or your Teams or your Microsoft Office applications. But specifically looking at Microsoft 365 Copilot. That is a closed system. Microsoft has pages of security documentation that says exactly how they handle your information, and it does not go outside of your tenant in Microsoft. It doesn't go to OpenAI, even though they use OpenAI's ChatGPT backend. Microsoft does use ChatGPT as the engine that runs it, but your data never leaves Microsoft. Not just Microsoft, but your private instance of Microsoft. And so even beyond that, and what I really like about Copilot is they call it grounded. But if you put a request into Microsoft 365 Copilot and it's looking at your internal documents or emails or Teams messages or Teams recorded videos, only data that you have permissions to access will be returned. So it adds a whole nother layer because it's now an enterprise solution with multiple users. It's only going to give you what you have permission to see. You don't just get everything in the Microsoft tenant, only what you have access to. So Microsoft Copilot's one. There's some other legal specific ones, whether that's CoCounsel or I mentioned DraftWise or Spellbook or Smokeball. There's a lot of legal specific ones. Most of the legal ones are considered closed systems because not only are they're privatized into your own instance. Anything that you put in or take out is yours. It's in your private version. But a lot of these legal specific applications are trained on the fundamental data is legitimate case data, is actual legal documents. So it's not just like OpenAI that has the internet as its source. This now has a very specific source that is legal specific. So the output you're going to get is a much higher quality because it's trained in that legal and using legal documents and legal templates. So those legal specific ones tend to be a lot higher in security and um, the quality of their outputs.
Right, I'm looking. I don't see any more immediate questions. Anyone? We'll give you just another minute or two.
All good questions. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to hand it back over to Ted because there was a few chats earlier around our support, cybersecurity, cloud stuff, and I want to give Ted an opportunity just to talk about that real quick.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, there were a few questions. I mean, primarily, as most everybody knows on the call, we are a managed service provider. We have just recently come up with a new solution called the Innovative Managed Solution that is fully comprehensive, far more than many of the other ones we've competed with in the past. It's got enhanced security. Satisfaction is guaranteed, and you don't see that a lot. So you can be assured that you'll never see an invoice you didn't expect is what it comes down to. So yeah, if you let me see if I can grab that link again. I'll throw it in the chat window. If you just want to set up a short meeting and talk to us about it, happy to do that. And
Yeah,
back
and
to
here
you,
what I'll
Eric.
do is I'll put your thing up on the screen. Give me a second. Okay, here you go. So this is the QR code as well, and Ted's got the link in chat.
Thanks.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for your time. Hopefully, I didn't put you to sleep. I appreciate everything. I look forward to our meetings.
Thanks, everyone.